Hey all, welcome in. I'm Rad, and today we're back in my hardcore world. Last episode we built an arena for my fantasy Asian city, and today we're doing demolition, building a waterfall, and laying out future builds on the run up to 2,000 days in the world. We're gonna start the demolition with the bee farm before moving it to the nether. I want both honey and honeycomb, so we'll build farms for both. And later we'll work on this boring base entrance and lay out our huge plans for the future. Okay, I promised demolition, so let's start to break things. I'm doing this at night because it's the best. All the bees are guaranteed to be in their hives and won't come out. I do see the sun coming up though, so let's get these broken quickly. And I can take the rest of this old farm out. And by the end of this episode, I'm going to remove our oldest remaining project in the world. Do you know what it is? Let's save some of this stuff for later. Like a lot of the world currently, this has become a mess. There's a lot of villagers in the breeder now. I want to get the trading hall filled up today. We're going to move every one of these villagers into our trading hall. I still have the entire second level of this to fill. And I won't set the trades for every villager yet because I want to know what changes Mojang's going to bring for 1.21, but I do want the villagers in each cell today. There's so much to do. I still want to place a natural staircase that wraps up the side of this mountain and all the way up to the temple. I need to create space for all the builds I want in this city, and plan for the mega build I want to put here. Today we're also going to put in final road plans for this, one up to the guilds, as well as the one over the residential area. And I think we can get some placeholder building corners in for all the builds in the city today too. Basically what I'm saying is the whole world's a work in progress. There's 100 projects to do and it's about time we get on with it. The honeycomb farm and later the honey farm are both going in this chunk here. I'll turn on chunk board as you can see, but this is the chunk that's already chunk loaded all of the time. Whatever I put here will be permanently loaded along with our iron farm. So let's start with the storage. I don't want to have to do another episode where I focus on building storage for a bunch of farms. Does it look familiar? It should. I used the same design like 8 times last episode. It's Samus the Sage's shulker loader. With the gates closed, I can add beehives directly here without them getting out. Keep this in mind. It is foreshadowing for something going horribly wrong later. All the bees are in now and it's working productively, or so it seems. They're using the azalea leaves as flowers, so I don't need flowers and dirt in here. It's just a little bit cleaner and a bit simpler to farm them. For some reason I confused my farms. I thought this was meant to be the honey bottle farm, but it's the design for the honeycomb farm. Sometimes I'm just kind of dumb. And this was one of those times. The bottles were getting force ejected over and over again, so yeah, I wasn't collecting all the honey here, even though it looked like I was. In order to fix this farm, I'll have to come back to it later. For now, it's time to cover up this eyesore. I told you there's a lot to do today. I know the other side is worse, but that's a project in itself. I can make this side look good quickly. I don't really have a plan for this. I'm going to lay down some blocks until I stop hating how it looks. And the top will need to be a lot less flat and square. When I see people try and build custom mountains, they also use these guide wires. I think I'm going to try wireframing a bit of this hill and see how it all comes together. Okay, I've done a lot of work shaping this, and now I think if I plant some cherry trees and then come back with some bone meal to make the ground look a little bit less cleared and a little bit less man-made, it will all come together. Okay, let's have a look at it. This used to be that squared off, exposed stone brick hole. Now I think it looks great. You can hardly tell I did work here, and I'm more than happy with that. Let's continue the aesthetic changes by starting the stone path up to the temple. I don't want it to look perfect. I've seen a lot of temples that have a straight walkway up to a landing, to another straight walkway, to another landing, and so on, and it all looks so right-angled and perfect. I don't want that. I want mine to blend into the mountain, to be a bit more naturally organic, and to look smooth but imperfect. It's not going to be perfect in every single spot. The idea that the stairs are winding naturally down rather than posing themselves up against the hill is really what I want. The corners and turns are a bit tricky like this, but I laid out a central guide and then put blocks on either side of it. Some of the levels are wrong to start with, but at least we're making some kind of progress. Like a lot of projects, it's going to be me putting something down so we have somewhere to start, and then fixing it up once I can see it. I'm much better at both building and terraforming when I have something already there. I admire those who can build from their mind, but I'm a much better editor than a first draft creator. And this is far from done, but it's definitely the start I needed. Now it's a lot of trial and error to get the shape exactly how I want. I edited one draft of this, and now I want to add a little bit of texture before I keep smoothing it out. I don't want to end up looking too consistent and planned, but I do want to add some andesite, mostly towards the edges where the wind and weather would wear it away a bit, and then in the footpath where people would lighten the stone by walking on it. Stone bricks and even a little cobblestone around the path and into the walls will look great and make the normal stone look more worn in as well. I used this path to make the shape a bit cleaner, and I think it's really starting to look like I want. Well, okay, the lower bits are looking good. The middle and upper need a bit more work. While I think about that, let's get the road wireframes in. I have the general shape laid out, but I want to create that central path today, connecting it all up and giving us an idea of where buildings can go later. A major part of this process is again the editing. When I was learning to play Minecraft, I used to get hung up on every block I placed myself being in its final resting place. Once I drew the line, that was the line. Unless it was very wrong, it was just the best I could do, but that's wrong. Editing your build, seeing the bigger pictures, and double checking yourself is a huge part of learning to build in a world. And it actually feels good if you're just starting a big project to get a few of the blocks out and outlines in place. I find the more I do on a project, the more natural it feels and the better it flows. I don't have to think about how, I just build the what, and that's way more fun. I like seeing the plan from different angles as well to check it over and over again. The main road looks good, so let's do the one up to the guild area. I keep calling it that without explaining, and that's probably confusing and something I do too often. I'm going to eventually put builds up here that represent all of the city's trades and guilds. Leatherworker, stonemason, armorer. Think about all the Minecraft jobs. Those are going to line up this hill, and the guilds are important to the city, but not on the level of the temple or trading hall where all the guilds meet to sell and trade. They'll get a fair bit of space each, unlike the residential area, which will be much more condensed housing and a bit cheaper looking. At the end of this guild district will be one last special build, but we'll save that reveal for later. Let's take a look at my progress. I think it looks great and will definitely work. Let's move on. The military roads are next. Unlike the winding casual guild roads, I want this to be more formal, straight, and squared off. Large, square buildings will go in this area, and I want it to look serious and efficient. A simple bridge will cross the river before main transportation lines run in both directions from here. And after adding a small road to our future mega build, another for the military, and one over to the arena, we're up to here. The city road planning is done for now. The residential area, however, had a much bigger problem. Existing paths already cover the area, and I need to remove those before I can even start on building new ones. I find the easiest way is to cover them with another solid block so they turn back into dirt. I started out with stone, but quickly realized that breaking stone wasn't that smart. If only we had another solid block that would moss. I used moss. Yep, that's much faster. With that done, I'm now free to create my own paths. I used roads in the main city because it's a built-up, proper city. But out here in the poorer residential district, the residents will make do with whatever building materials and roads they can get. This means the formal stone and cobble paths end and dirt begins. The homes out here will be made of multiple wood types from jungle and oak to acacia, dark oak, and birch, whatever they can get. When I do get out to build the residential area, the theme is going to be scraps. These are leftover build materials from other projects, and the villagers will make homes from them. Okay, let's take a look. As I mentioned earlier, the residential area will be tightly packed homes close to each other for both protection and necessity. They're on the outskirts for a reason. There are numerous paths and plenty of villagers can live here. I'm pausing using F3 and escape. That lets me see, but doesn't put the giant menu over the top of the screen. Roads and paths are now connected for each main build district. One day when this area is finished, this is the screenshot I want, and this is the payoff you get for watching me build this city over the next 10 episodes or so. And then we'll have an entire city built up from a guy who's barely built a decent looking house before. If you think you can't learn how to build in Minecraft, you're wrong. After the roads were done, I built one more road, from this breeder into the villager hall, and after sticking a rail line on top of it, I moved all of those villagers from here into the hall itself. They're still in minecarts and not in their pods, but we'll get there. I'm not sure what everyone's job will be, but these 5 are likely extra clerics for redstone dust and bottles of XP. The top will be full of farmers, leatherworkers, smiths, fishermen, masons. Moving them in is pretty simple. I just push them, then add a block here, and when I want to roll their trades later, we'll make a simple setup to do that as well. Escapees are then captured in boats for easy reassignment. I'm on day 1900, and this episode will mark the final stretch before we pass 2,000 days played in the world. I still have like 8 projects to do and 100 days to get it all done. I'm starting to worry whether it's all possible. One of those projects is this ceiling. It's unfinished and disgusting, kind of. Originally I left it like this as I was simply out of everything I needed to finish. Quartz, dark oak, a good tool to break it all up. There was a lot that I needed, and by the end I just called it close enough. But now I have everything I need to fix this and make it a lot nicer in here. We're getting a bit low on dark oak, but I should have more than enough. I'll definitely need to run the farm soon though. I left the bottom row of stone and dirt in so I have somewhere to stand, and now it's just a matter of laying down the dark oak and stripping it. I could use my log stripper, but it's only a little bit of dark oak overall, probably not worth the trip for such a little amount. In the end, I actually found it simpler to lay down all the dark oak and strip it at once by flying it into the 1 block gap. It was also kind of fun this way, so yeah, it worked out. And once I was done, removing the last layer that I'm crouching on was simple enough. The next step is to continue these beams all the way up and finish the quartz panels. Could I maybe buy some quartz to keep building your home? Thanks. What a difference a little bit of work makes, huh? And yes, I still get a lot of redstone from these clerics here, so let's grab that before I leave. This is going to be the new entrance to our storage room. It's wider, easier to fly in, and now I just need the entire waterfall that covers it up. I'm off to design that in a creative test world with a friend, but we'll come back to that later. Meanwhile, I decided to fix my bee farm. I started safely, as you can imagine. Closed gates, one opening, thinking about the problem, still not realizing it's not the bottle farm. All I had to do, to be clear, was just remove the bottles and add shears. The entire farm is built correctly and has been the whole time. I tried swapping the glass with the solid blocks again, but watch this mistake. Hindsight's 20/20, right? I replaced the front panels and then the top, but not that end. I missed it. I add the redstone back, and this lever. Don't flip the lever. Crap. With that, I released all of the bees, without an end block on the other side. Some got out, then more. I actually had no idea what to do in this situation. I looked at my options and more got out. Bottles were getting ejected at me. The whole thing has now become a complete disaster. In the moment, I think I believed it was over, so I removed the glass and just let them all out. Why not? We had 27 bees in this, 2 are dead, and that means something like 25 are now running around the nether roof, unsupervised. But I still have bottles everywhere. I had to either capture the bees or let them all go and start from scratch. This is a lot of bees, so I did the first thing I could think of. I grabbed a poppy from the iron farm filter and tried to lure the bees all to me. Still had no plan for what I was going to do with them. And this somewhat worked, except for the lack of a plan. I had to lure them up to their hives, hoping I could get their attention until they all wanted to go to their nests at the same time, or... So I don't know what the plan was. Don't try this. It doesn't work. Anyway, my next idea was simpler, but also way smarter. Boats. So using that poppy, I lured bees into boats, which was very slow and resulted in most of them getting much further away. Then my brain turned back on after all the chaos. Leads. If you ever have 25 escaped bees, just use leads. You stupid! I was able to then capture a bunch of bees. I trapped them in boats as I had planned so I could then breed myself more and make sure that I had the numbers for both farms. Those newborn bees were immediately led to boats as well. And after taking my frustrations out on this armor stand, and this one, I took a break. And the next morning it was finally waterfall building time. So the idea here is that I'm going to build up the terrain on the outside of the entrance, create a carved out waterfall over the entrance, and then send the water to the underground river that's behind me. I've brought some of the waterfall blocks into the entrance with me to blend the difference from inside to outside a bit better, and the bottom here will be a bit like that when it's done too. The water will then flow down here and into this underground passage, under the bridge, here, to the river that's on the other side. Wait, watch how this looks. I don't know why, but there's something so nice about flying through the waterfall like this. There's almost a visual switch that happens from the inside to the outside and vice versa. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The outside is so bright and blue, and inside is black walls and dark, and it instantly changes when you hit the water. And now, just like the cherry hill from earlier, we're going to hit it with enough bone meal to kill a creeper. I'll take out all the flowers and just leave the greens. The flowers bring back colors I didn't intend to go with the falls. It has its own vibe and I want to keep it that way. I don't mind the pink petals though because my main base is in a cherry grove, so up at the very top and heading into my pagoda I'll take out the 2 high grass as well, make it look a little bit less wild. And thanks to Meebin for all the design help, his link will be in the description, check it out. For my next trick, I'm going to plan out the floors for nearly every remaining building in the city, starting with this house right here. This is a pretty ambitious goal. I want to put in the 4 corners on the ground floor of all the residential homes, the military buildings, the guild shops, and at least a marker of sorts for the other major buildings that don't have a defined floor plan idea yet. I'm using very brightly colored wool to mark these out, because it's very easy to remove later with shears and it shows up when we fly over, so planning's all a bit easier. These residential homes will be small, 5x5, 7x7, 9x13s, that sort of thing. None of them will be larger than 11x11 and none smaller than 5x5 I think. And that makes planning the spacing a bit easier as I know most will be small squares and rectangles, pretty similar in size and shape, and all being fairly close to the main paths that we've already created. As much as I want the paths that I've created as well, I'll move those where the flow of buildings doesn't make sense either. This lower section looks good for now. Like most of the world, the further I get into a project, the better it flows. It probably speaks to my own building inexperience that sometimes these projects are the first time I've done something like that, so instead of knowing how it's going to go, I learn on the job. I think that's fairly common in Minecraft though. By the time I finished laying out the residences, I feel like I knew why each home was there, how it connected to the rest, and I was just sprinting through them. Some of the further away homes were a bit larger, you get more space but you're on the outer edge. The ones in the middle are more uniform 7x7 buildings, and the ones near the river, even though we're in the poorest area of town, are still the most prestigious. In the end, there are about 35 to 40 homes here, and before you ask how I plan to build 40 homes, remember they're really small and not very detailed. These are not on the level of the pagoda, the temple, or the arena, or any of the city projects. I've planned about 12 roof designs already, and they're very straightforward floor plans to repeat, so this will all get done. Also, I considered putting corners in like this so you could see all the buildings more clearly, but it's a lot more wool to remove later. I tried to leave a little room in between the homes, so you could just do a few gardens and decorative builds here as well. Hopefully the vision for the city is starting to become more and more clear as we go. The residences sit on the outside, but it's a very important piece of the overall picture that we're painting. Let's continue with the guild shops. I'm going to outline the guild shops starting with the build that will go up here on the hill, and the next will go right beside the city hub down here. From there, I'll work my way up the hill, creating various shop sizes and layouts with a vague idea of what I want to do for each. Unlike the residences, these shops have some money from the sales of their products, and they want to put some of that money into buying the biggest and best shops they can. And what kind of shop has the most value in a world where hostile creatures roam the woods just outside your city? Armorers and weaponsmiths are probably highly valued. A local bakery for some bread probably less so, while a cleric, more like a modern doctor, is critical to tend to your illness and wounds. You'll notice I put in some corners on these builds. Because of the somewhat different shapes, I want to make sure I remember exactly which blocks are going to belong to which shops when I come back later to build these up. I don't have exact plans for these builds yet, so I'm leaving plenty of space to get creative and make some cool stuff here though. At the end of the path, I do have a very specific and special build in mind, so I'll mark it out simply for now, but it won't be a simple build. And here's a look at the guild shops from above. It looks like there are around 14 separate builds, but a few of the buildings will go together, so it will end up being more like 10 trades. Our next layouts will be for the remaining large and important city structures in the world. Unlike the residences and guild shops, these are prominent standalone structures that will work together to make the city function. They'll be very similar in style and color to the existing builds in the city, and will all have plenty of space, landscaping, and details to make each one stand out as a build on its own. This breeder is now in the way. I need to let them finish up so I can remove it. Hurry up and I think there are about 8 more of these reasonably detailed large builds in this part of the city. That's about what I was hoping for, and it fits pretty well. When I finish the city, my last project here will be a mega build in this corner. This will be the most impressive build by far in the whole area. I'm not going to give away too much, but it will be a fitting end to a lot of work, I hope. Finally, the military builds will, much like their roads, be rectangular builds that have room for supplies, barracks, training, and planning. They're not beautiful or very aesthetic, but more functional and large open builds. Kind of like loud is funny, but when big is impressive. And the colors for these builds will mirror the sentry towers around the city and be darker and more serious than the rest. I expect only a few large builds here, as they'll mostly be training grounds and staging areas. Yeah, I think this is looking about how I want it to. After looking at the overall plan, I'm going to add 2 more builds I think will make the area great. One will be in the cliffside right about here. Ow. The other will be a large stone bridge that spans from this side of the river here to over on that side there. I think this is a better look at their final spots. So this is a lot of future planning. Let's take a look at the whole thing. I've had so much of this planned in my head for nearly 2,000 in-game days and over 10 months IRL. It feels incredibly freeing to just put it all on the ground, plan it, see it, and realize it's actually going to happen now. We're now about 1,940 days into the world, and I still have a truckload of work to do. So here's the plan. I'm not ready to see the last of our breeding couple. We'll need to get them to repopulate a section of the city one day, so for now I want to move them to a safe spot. I've chosen this one at the top of the villager center where it's easy to get them out and move them around later. Getting them to fall into their own breeder was simple, and now they're safely relocated. It feels weird, but with the first iron farm and sheep farm already gone, as well as the creeper farm and the underground trading hall, we've now removed every farm build from episode 1 and replaced it with something far, far better. Okay, I can't reach 2,000 days without at least trying this next project one more time. Yes, I'm back at the tropical fish farm with one goal, and I don't care what it takes, we're getting this. Do I want to spend 50 days doing this? No. Will I? You betcha. See, I already have a world I'm proud of. Lots of builds, tons of great and overpowered farms, a plan for the future, I have all the armor trims, 25 sets of netherite armor, and anything I want in the world, except the rare blue axolotl. I have a few projects I'd like to finish before 2,000 days, but this is the one I want the most. Stop me when this feels familiar. Not him, not this one, not you either. I'll bring you back when I'm closer. Y'all, I was at this for over 3 hours. Collect fish, collect fish, breed with fish. If anyone is really that bored, sure, I'll upload 3 hours of fish and axolotl breeding. Over and over I fed, collected, and fed some more. But let me show you the uncut moments. My mic was actually muted here and I don't have audio for this. I'm not going to fake a huge reaction, but I was insanely happy to be done with this. To finally have my blue boy. I didn't also know how to react, so I only knew one thing. If I lose this guy, if he dies, the world is over. I will uninstall this game and never look back. This isn't a safe place, so let's get him to a safe place. Let's rename him. Let's do all the things we need to do. I cleared out a cell over here, and there he is. I could cry. I'm so excited at this. Even watching the footage back more than a week later, I'm still overwhelmed with how long this took, how much work it was. I mean, I've had blue axolotls before, but I got them after like 250 or 350 breedings. It never felt like a lot of work, and even though they can be quite hard to get, this little guy was a lot more work than all of them put together. Alright, let's name this guy Chance because there was such a low one of getting him. I kept a very close eye on Chance until he grew up and I brought him a new friend. Chance and his friend have 50-50 odds of making a new blue or a new brown axolotl. Of course it's brown. 5 minutes later I tried again and this time we got another blue. Now don't think too hard about the next part, but once that baby grew up, breeding a blue with a blue will give you a blue 100% of the time, forever onward. So let's make another blue axolotl. Don't think too hard about it. I scooped up Chance to take with me, and now our axolotl farm can produce any color we want, anytime we want. So I put Chance with the original 4 axolotls, and now I have my complete collection. Finally. If you're wondering what it took, I've emptied 949 buckets of axolotl, almost 100% of those were failed breeds. I've also dropped another 126 buckets off the edge of the farm. 100% of those were failed breedings as well. To the best of my knowledge, it took more than 1,000 axolotl breedings, 2,000 tropical fish, or nearly 75 shulkers of fish, and nearly 7 hours to get Chance. And that puts me at day 1955. Back when I originally passed 1,000 days played in the world, I spent the next 100 or so days running farms, catching up, and ultimately spending a big part of this 1,000 days doing work that had to be done. I didn't want to do that after day 2000, so I did it early this time. I ran the gold farm for over 15 stacks of gold blocks, then I ran the wither skeleton farm for a couple of shulkers of coal, over a stack of heads, and tons of bones for bone meal. Then I ran my slime farm for 90 minutes. With the mob switch turned on. Then fixed it and ran it some more. I ran the raid farm quite a lot for emeralds, redstone, and gunpowder. Then I used the bone meal from the wither skeleton farm to run the bamboo farm for more bamboo. And I remembered that I'm a bit low on dark oak, so I used that farm for a good while as well. My goal is always to come out of that farm sapling positive, and I did. And I'm back up to about 10 shulkers of that, which feels like enough for now. Then it was onto the ghast farm. I get more gunpowder per hour here than the raid farm, so I thought I'd get way ahead on rockets for the next 1,000 days and beyond. By day 1977, I was up to the copper farm. I built this in episode 16, but only ran it for a few minutes. I thought it'd be smart to get a bit ahead on the copper, as I know it'll play a huge part in a future build project. And the tunnel bore was up next. I have so few diamonds in the world despite being 2,000 days in. I'd also like more gold, redstone, tuff, and cobbled deep slate. And then after the blaze farm, I felt like we had made enough progress on farm running for now. Through a bit of painstaking trouble, I managed to get all the bees back to the overworld and back to my pagoda. And after a brief escape attempt was stopped, I had enough back with me to fix all of my previous problems. And by now I realized that I was using the wrong farm for the wrong thing, so I removed all of the bottles from the honeycomb farm, and with the iron farm directly next to me, crafted a ton of shears to fill the farm that I had already built. Once the shulker loader was cleared and a new shulker in place, this farm was actually finished. Adding beehives to the nether version of ENX04's honey farm is actually challenging. I didn't want to escape bees again as I would have likely lost my remaining brain cells. Unlike the overworld where you can do this at night and it's perfectly easy, doing this in the nether means the bees immediately pop out and start working. So I deliberated on a plan and then I just went for it. Thankfully there were no escapees this time and everything went to plan. I was able to finish the farm and get it all working with no further issues. Both the honey bottle and the honeycomb farm are now working and permanently loaded. Trading repaired my gear and got us more redstone. I then ran the stone farm for more blocks and the raid farm again, and suddenly, the sun is rising on day 2000. I'm on top of the church from day 0, as always ending where it started. I accomplished all of my goals for this 1000 days and then some, from the temple in episode 11 to getting the rare blue axolotl today. As you've seen, I have a huge amount of plans for the next 1000 days as well. We're going to build in nearly every episode for at least a while. Wait for it. Wait for it. And there it is, 2000 days survived in hardcore Minecraft. A full 2000 day movie will recap the past 1000 days, and I'll be playing in the background preparing to show you more of this world. I have a mini-series coming out soon and you won't see hardcore for a little while, so as the world disappears behind me, I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.